They say you never truly know who your neighbors are until conflict pulls off the mask. For months, my family believed we lived on the safest, friendliest street in town, a place where children rode their bikes freely, where Saturday barbecues filled the air with laughter, and where every parent swore they'd look out for the other's kids. But all of that shattered in a single afternoon. My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, had been playing in the cul-de-sac, her laughter echoing like music, when a spoiled teenage boy named Tyler picked up a baseball bat. Not to hit a ball. Not for a game. But to swing it at her. The next thing I knew, my daughter's head was inches away from being crushed. And when I confronted him, I expected discipline. Accountability. Maybe even remorse. Instead, his mother, a woman the entire neighborhood feared, a woman everyone whispered about but never dared challenge, stormed out and dismissed it as boys will be boys. But this wasn't just about a reckless teenager. This was about a mother who had built an empire of control, intimidation, and lies, ruling over our entire community. What she didn't know was that my family wasn't one she could bully into silence. What she didn't know was that I had a background she'd soon regret crossing. This is the story of how a spoiled boy nearly destroyed my daughter's innocence, and how his powerful, arrogant mother thought she could bury the truth until the day her empire crumbled in front of everyone. To understand what happened, you have to know a little about our neighborhood. On the surface, it looked picture-perfect. Manicured lawns, tidy houses, and a homeowners association that promised order and safety. But behind that illusion, one woman pulled the strings, Karen. She was the president of the HOA, and to many, she was untouchable. Karen was the kind of neighbor who always wore expensive sunglasses, carried a clipboard like it was a crown, and barked orders as if she owned every square foot of our block. She had influence at the school, the city council, even the police department. People didn't just respect her, they feared her. Her son, Tyler, was her mirror image in teenage form, spoiled, arrogant, and utterly convinced that rules didn't apply to him. While most kids rode bikes or played soccer, Tyler preferred destruction. He bullied, mocked, and tested boundaries, and his mother defended every stunt. Teachers whispered about him. Parents complained. But nothing ever stuck, because Karen always swept it under the rug. And then came the day Lily met Tyler in the worst way possible. It started innocently enough. Lily was outside, chalk in hand, drawing rainbows across the pavement. A group of neighborhood kids joined in, but Tyler wanted the space for his game of baseball. At first, he shouted. Then, he shoved one boy out of the way. Lily stood her ground. My daughter never backed down easily. That's when Tyler picked up the bat. He swung wildly, and the wood whooshed past Lily's head with terrifying speed. She froze in shock. Another swing might have ended it all. I rushed in, pulled her back, and demanded answers. That's when Karen herself stormed out of her immaculate front porch, scolding me instead of her son. She waved a manicured hand and said, "Boys get rough. You should keep your fragile little girl inside." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a bratty teenager's tantrum. This was a family who believed they were above consequence. And they had no idea who they had just provoked. At first, I thought the principal would resolve it. I filed a report, met with the school, and expected some level of accountability. But when we walked into the office, Karen was already there, sitting beside Tyler with a smug smile. She dominated the conversation before I could speak. She claimed Lily had been in the way. She produced statements from Tyler's so-called friends. She even implied my daughter was exaggerating. The principal, clearly intimidated, nodded along and dismissed the complaint. My daughter's near-death experience was reduced to a minor playground scuffle. Karen leaned close as I left, whispering, "You're new here. You should learn how things work." From that day, the harassment escalated. Letters from the HOA began showing up in my mailbox. At first, they were petty, the grass too tall, the hose not neatly coiled. But then it got personal. They fined us for Lily's painted gnome, claiming it violated decorative uniformity. They cited us for parking slightly outside the line. Every week, a new violation arrived. When I checked with neighbors, I discovered the truth. Karen's HOA wasn't enforcing fairness. She was targeting anyone who crossed her. And most people were too scared to speak out. I started documenting everything. Photos, measurements, timestamps. I treated it like a military operation, cataloging every false claim. But Karen didn't stop there. One afternoon, 2 men in reflective vests arrived at my door, claiming to be inspectors. Something felt off, so I asked for ID. They couldn't produce any. When I checked later, I discovered they weren't inspectors at all. They were Karen's hired muscle, sent to intimidate me. The breaking point came when Lily started to notice. She asked me why people looked away when we walked by. She asked why Tyler laughed at her in the schoolyard, calling her a liar. My little girl, who once believed in kindness and fairness, was learning what it felt like to be silenced. And that was something I could never accept. I wasn't alone. Slowly, other neighbors began to approach me. Bill, a retired Marine, confessed that Karen had fined him for having an American flag slightly larger than the regulation size. A young mother admitted her kids weren't allowed to play on the grass after Karen reported them for disturbing the peace. One by one, people revealed how Karen had used her position to bully and profit. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Tyler hadn't been alone when he swung that bat. His best friend, George Jr., was with him. And George Jr.'s father just happened to be the HOA treasurer. When I confronted him privately, I saw the guilt in his eyes. He admitted his son had been there, but more importantly, he knew what Karen had been hiding. He showed me the ledgers, proof that Karen was embezzling HOA funds, funneling money into her personal account, paying for vacations and luxury items under the guise of community improvements. With evidence in hand, I knew the next HOA meeting would be the battlefield. The annual meeting was packed. Karen strutted in, sunglasses perched on her head, confident as ever. She started the evening the way she always did, commanding, lecturing, intimidating. But this time, she didn't hold the floor for long. When it was my turn to speak, I presented everything. First, the harassment, letters, photos, videos of her fake inspectors. Then the neighbors stood up, one after another, sharing their stories. Murmurs turned into outrage. Karen's smile began to falter. And then I dropped the bombshell, the financial records. The projector lit up with evidence, inflated expenses, forged receipts, funds diverted into Karen's personal account. Gasps filled the room. Karen's face twisted from confidence to panic. She shouted, called me a liar, tried to intimidate George Sr. into silence. But he stood up, shaking, pale, and confirmed everything. The crowd erupted. Police officers, who had been quietly tipped off beforehand, entered the hall. Karen tried to storm out, but this time, she had nowhere to run. Handcuffs clicked shut, and the queen of our neighborhood was led away under the stunned gaze of everyone she once controlled. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Karen faced charges for fraud, embezzlement, and harassment. Tyler, once shielded from consequence, was ordered to perform community service and attend mandatory counseling. For the first time, he had to face accountability. The HOA was restructured. Neighbors who had once been divided came together, electing leaders who actually cared about the community. Bill raised his flag proudly again. Kids played freely on the grass. And Lily, my brave little girl, walked through the neighborhood without fear, her smile slowly returning. For me, it wasn't just about winning against Karen. It was about proving to my daughter that justice exists. That no one, no matter how powerful they seem, is above consequence. Karen had thought she could silence us. Instead, she exposed herself. And that's how the so-called queen of our neighborhood finally fell. Not because I shouted the loudest, and not because I had the most power, but because the truth, once brought into the light, is stronger than any lie. This story isn't just about my family. It's about what happens when people stop letting fear control them. Bullies only win when we stay silent. The moment we speak, the moment we stand together, their power fades. My daughter will grow up knowing that justice matters, and that no one, no matter how wealthy or connected, can stand above it forever. If this story spoke to you, if it reminded you of times when you or someone you love had to fight back against unfairness, then I'd love for you to be part of this community. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Every day, I'll bring you powerful stories of justice, resilience, and truth. Because somewhere out there, someone needs the reminder that they are not alone, and that standing up is always worth it. Thank you for being here. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and remember, the truth always finds its way out.